I'm not going to lie, I've been pretty obsessed with this case in Ohio, these 16 children. Hamden, Ohio, Vinton County. It happened on June 30th. Sheriff's deputies were executing a warrant on a house unrelated and found 16 kids crammed into a 12 by 12 room. The governor said it was pure evil, almost like feral animals, deplorable, horrendous, disgusting. One or more of the children may have died if...
Pure evil. The children were almost like feral animals. One or more would have died if officers had not responded when they did. That is not the opening monologue of a horror film. It is the official public statement released by the governor of Ohio after deputies walked into a residential home in Vinton County on June 30th. The document itself is a dry, bureaucratic press release. The dissonance comes from the fact that the words feral animals and pure evil are not hyperbole designed for clickbait. They are the sanitized legal conclusion of a state government trying to describe a 12 by 12 room. Now, I need you to hold that image. Do not think of a bedroom. Think of a garden shed. The kind you buy at a hardware store for $200. Now seal the windows. Fill the air with the ammonia of human waste and rotting garbage. Remove every book, every toy, every mattress. Now place 16 human beings inside that space, ranging in age from 20 months to 18 years, and lock the door for approximately 4 years. That is not a metaphor. That is the precise square footage recorded in the affidavit. 16 children crammed into 144 square feet, a space so tight that to lie down they had to stack limbs like cordwood. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you are subscribed to Endless Cryme, because we do not just cover the story, we follow the evidence. The exhibit is not just the room. It is the paperwork that framed the room. In the state of Ohio, to receive Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, you must disclose the number of people in your household. You list their names, their dates of birth, their social security numbers. The government file for this household listed a number. But the number was a lie, and the government file was a fiction that bought food while the children starved. The system saw what it wanted to see. A clerk at a local Dollar General noticed the family using an EBT card. They saw a transaction approved.
Weirdly, the Dollar General store staff, they noticed that they were using a food stamp kind of purchase device. And it just makes me wonder, were there food stamps being acquired in that household without the requisite information of how many kids there really were? Or maybe they were just surviving on, I need food stamps for me and 1 or 2 kids. Because I would think at that point, if you're getting the food stamps for the kids, they'd say, where are the kids? We don't see them registered for school.
Well, and to that point is that agencies like child welfare that provide food stamps and TANF benefits, child welfare benefits to families in need, don't necessarily correlate to school districts. And they may not necessarily, just depends on what state. They may want to see the children and they may not. So it would be that, and to the point of those government workers, they have very high caseloads. When they are distributing, aid, they may have a caseload of like 200. So then to be able to say, where is this, where is that, the system starts to weaken with that high caseload. So for them to say, where are the kids? We need to see them would really warrant some concern on that,
What the system did not see was the 18-year-old inside the house who could not write her own name.
I can't understand how many systems have missed this family, but what I've read and what I've gathered, I did not personally work on this case, is that this family was, they moved around a lot. And oftentimes when you move around a lot, you're trying to escape systems. So that could be child protection, that could be the school system, that could be law enforcement, many nonprofits that are trying to assist your family. Once we have seen this pattern in other families, once there's a cause of concern and maybe there's a referral of some sort from one of those agencies I mentioned, if they come and have some interaction with family and the family then feels like there's a threat to maybe removal or criminal, they leave. So this family in particular was moving around a lot. It could...
The profound institutional irony here is so sharp it could sever an artery. A welfare algorithm processed a monthly payment to feed mouths that the state did not officially know existed. The currency of public assistance flowed into a house that functioned as a private prison. This is the moment where the forensic narrative explodes the official one. The initial police report uses terms like deplorable and unsanitary, clinical words that drain the horror of its texture. To understand what those words actually mean, we have to look at a parallel narrative, a case that wrote the Forensic Handbook on how to dismantle a house of horrors. In 2018, the Turpin family case in Paris, California gave us the template. 13 siblings held captive, starved, and tortured. When those children were pulled from that house, law enforcement faced the same impossible question Ohio investigators face today. How do you extract usable criminal evidence from a victim whose entire linguistic development was shaped by a 12 by 12 room? To answer that, the state turned to a specific kind of professional, a forensic interviewer.
For her. So just so you know her background, she was the director of forensic services and victim advocacy with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department when they were called to the Turpin house. And that's what she jumped into. That was her role, her action. And since that time, she's left the Sheriff's Department and she's started a nonprofit called Speak Heart Alliance, where she does a lot of the same services and has, is able to offer a lot of her same expertise. I had so many questions for her in a limited amount of time, but wow, did I ever learn a lot. And you will too. Here's our conversation. Denise, thank you so much for being on Drop Dead Serious. I have so many questions. And people like you're just like child whisperers when it comes to kids who have been traumatized. I want to speak mostly about what happened in Ohio with these 16 kids, but because you've got, the Turpin case as your history, I'd love to just ask you if when you heard about Ohio and the 16 kids there, if everything from Turpin flooded back to you.
Unfortunately, it's not like that in my work. I've done 25 years of forensic interviewing and child abuse, human trafficking. When I see these really horrific and sad cases that come on in the media, it just breaks my heart. It reminds me of every kid that I've interviewed, many of them who've been tortured, sexually abused, starved. So it does take me back to that, but actually that case in particular that happened in Riverside County kind of never leaves you. It's always there. You always kind of think about like what happened to those kids or wish them well, and just all of the cases kind of run together in your mind and our mind as professionals. There are some that are really significant.
In the Ohio case, the man tasked with leading the investigation, Sheriff Ryan Cain, confirmed that multiple state agencies immediately deployed trauma-informed interview protocols, the very protocols forged in the fire of cases like Turpin. It is a grim inheritance, the architecture of the interview, the rhythm of the questions, the scaffolding of language, all built upon the bones of a previous atrocity.
Yeah, I mean, I've had kids that never spoke. But, when I was younger, when I first started the work, it was a little bit more difficult. As I started to kind of become really comfortable as an interviewer, to really just, here's my protocol. Yes, I know what I need to do as a forensic interviewer, but I can be a human. And bringing in like that humanistic part, just so like, you can't say, I care about you so much. You can't say those things because you've got to go to court. And that could be suggestive, could be seen as coercive. Mm-hmm. So really it's just a presence. And I'd say that I was the person that they would bring the most difficult kid to and say, let's see if you can do it. And oftentimes I could do it, but it's a lot of humility. It's a lot of grace. It's just like, you're really like surrendering to like the space of like saying before an interview or like interview, please let me be like the best self that I can be, and let them know that I'm really authentic and getting that I'm here. I care. Really, I do.
And here we arrive at the ticking clock. The children are out of the room. They are in a sterile hospital ward, wrapped in warm blankets for perhaps the first time. But the medical clock is running in parallel with the evidentiary clock. Bruises fade. Malnourished bodies begin to heal, erasing the physical record of deprivation. And the memory. The memory is the most fragile evidence of all. A forensic interviewer does not walk into a hospital room and ask, "Did your father starve you?" That is a yes or no question. And a child born into this solitary confinement does not know what a normal amount of food is. Their baseline is pain. Their normal is the echo of their own footsteps as they paced from one wall to the other 300 times a day. So the interviewer must build a narrative from the ground up, using only open-ended prompts. Tell me everything about what you do when you wake up. Tell me everything about what happens next. Tell me about the last time you ate.
But it's an art.
Well, tell me about that. How do you build that rapport with kids who may have been, there was awful stuff going on in the Turpin house. I don't know what was going on in this other house. I have no idea, what the Sider kids went through, but how do you build that rapport?
So there's the art and science of interviewing. We follow a protocol. So you have a question design of questions and how you ask questions, which is very different than the way most people talk to children.
Right.
But the rapport building is really a finesse, a little dance, really, it's hard to teach people this. Mm-hmm. If you really just know how to connect with people. It's an energy exchange, it's a presence, it's a kindness, but without being super kind and giving them all this information. And you really are walking a line. But you, with experience, you come in saying, like, tell me everything about you. And if there is like apprehension, you take it really slow. You may ask to draw with them or color.
But you don't go to the heart of the crime right away. I mean, you don't just come in and say, tell me everything your parents did, because that's it. It's over.
Mm-mm. You know, you oftentimes too, if there's a lot of apprehensiveness, you say, like, tell me about how you're feeling right now. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you're thinking right now. You know, I understand something's happened in your family. How do you feel about talking to me? And then kind of, you know, assessing and just debriefing with them about their concern about what's happening in their family system in that moment. They may not be saying anything about abuse. It's just what their interests are. Tell me about something you like to do. Tell me everything about what you like to do. And then you hear what they like to do rather than me saying, do you like school? Do you like pizza? Do you like food? Do you like, no, it's asking them what they are into, what they like, and then you play off that. You kind of grow that. You do narratives, which is a narrative is really, I'm going to ask you a question that's open-ended. Tell me everything about what you like to do. I'm going to hear it, and then I'm going to build a narrative off that you, the child, is going to have to explain. So you said you like to dance. Tell me about the last time you danced, or you like to, you know, play.
Where do you dance?
Yeah. Tell me about tell me about, you like to play with your brothers and sisters. Tell me about the last time. We're actually trying to build an event. So when we do this work, we're not going to who, what, when, where. Right. We're going to tell me about something. The kid is to then tell you a little bit, and then you say, tell me about the last time you did that. Tell me everything from beginning to end. And you're trying to get the child to talk.
So this is rapport building, but at the same time, there must be things that come out that are just clear and convincing evidence. So for instance, what do you like to do? I like to walk from the one wall to the other, and I do it 300 times a day. This is now evidence. Like, it's your rapport building, but you're getting the goods.
Right. And so then you're like, tell me everything about doing that. How do you do it? Where do you do it? You know, explain it to me, essentially, is what we're saying. We use different language. That is part of a protocol, but we're like, tell me everything about that.
The questions sound like a child's game, but they are a scalpel. Every answer maps the internal geography of the crime. I walk from the wall to the other wall. Becomes an admission of confinement. My mom told me I had to, becomes coercion. The door only opened when the light outside was gone. Becomes a timeline. The vocabulary of the law demands a specific level of anatomical and temporal detail to secure a conviction for torture, for felonious assault, for endangering children. Yet the interviewer cannot lead. They cannot suggest. They must be a neutral, silent mirror reflecting only what the child gives them. This is the brutal paradox of juvenile forensic interviewing. The most vulnerable witness must do the heaviest lifting. They must articulate the unspeakable, often without the vocabulary for private body parts, often without knowing that the hands that touched them were not supposed to. The Turpin case taught us that a skilled interviewer spends 20 minutes just sitting in the space of a terrified child before even approaching the topic of harm. Because a child who has been told never tell sees every adult as a threat, uniform or not.
You will never get anything from that child. They will continue to be nonverbal. They will not give up the goods.
So when I saw that just recently, actually, I watch them often. And so I saw that and I thought it's just a little too soon for her. So that officer doing those things, that was nice. It was a nice gesture. He was trying to, build rapport. He was trying to show that he was safe. And that's great. They should do that. But they should really never in that moment try to start forcing conversation about what happened to them. That's why forensic interviewers exist. Yeah. They should, be the safe person. Let them reiterate, you're safe. We have you. And then a skilled forensic interviewer will come in, and they really do a lot of effort not to align with law enforcement. You're a neutral person. You're not the police and you're not the child protective social worker. And sometimes you need to articulate that. Like, I'm just a lady who talks to kids, and I understand something happened. I'm really here to hear you and what's happened. But let's get to know each other. Let's do this non-abuse related information gathering before we even get there. So that's what we would do with that little girl. It wouldn't be in her best interest, when I saw that, to interview her in that home where she was victimized. Get her out of there and get her into a child advocacy center. They're all over the country. They are built on 10 standards that is recognized by the National Children's Alliance, so that there is best practice on how to do that. So when you take a child to a child advocacy center, it's very friendly. It's child friendly. It's all made for children. It's all those systems are set in place to help this reluctant child start to speak.
Right. The coaching terrifies me, because sometimes the coaching on kids becomes their reality, you know?
It does. And oftentimes you'll say, well, tell me how you know that. Source monitoring. I'm trying to figure out how they know that. And they say, well, because this parent told me, I wasn't born yet, they told me that, daddy was arrested and he went to jail because he was dealing drugs. And you say, and how old are you? Oh, I was in mommy's tummy. And you're like, okay. So, but they articulate it like they were there. Right. It's because they've been told the story by a parent and they believe it. So that interviewer needs to dig in to see how that, we just don't listen to kids and say, okay, we're done. We have to get additional information, because we have to be able, or law enforcement has to be able to corroborate or decide if that these allegations are sufficient enough to continue criminally.
The Ohio children are even younger, even less verbal.
And the child's willingness to reveal what's so mortifying potentially to them, or terrorizing. Never tell anybody, or I will do something to you, will never leave those kids. So how do you get beneath the terrified child? And again, I don't know that that's the circumstance in this home. I know something is very wrong in that home, but how do you get beneath the terrified child who thinks everything will get worse if he or she says anything?
So the difference between these kids and the Turpin kids is that the Turpin kids, they were ready. One of the siblings jumped out of the room, got help, and said, we've had enough. So when I talked to them, the one child, she never stopped talking. She was like, talk. She told me everything. These kids are accidental disclosures, is what we would call that. They did not make the intentional outcry. Someone didn't go get rescued, or they didn't find a support person to be able to tell, what is going on. So then when you, from the, authorities, they still see you as a person with this system. They may not have the words or know what that is, but it's scary to them. And so you go and talk to them. They, accidental disclosures, those kids may not tell you initially what happened. It may take time. So you may try to interview them and they're not saying anything. They're really reluctant. They won't speak, or they're very limited in disclosure.
How do you make them feel safe? How do you convince them, oh no, this is now the safe place. You are free to speak. How do you convince a little kid?
So we say those kind of things like, this is a really safe room. Everyone here that's here to talk to you today. My job is to talk to you, to keep you safe, to understand your family, figure out how we can help to understand what's happened to you. This is a safe place. So it is language. It is a feeling. It is a finesse of the interviewer to make that kid feel that way. Do all kids come out feeling safe? No, but it's like so many little parts of who you are as a person is how you conveying like a lot of, through your eyes, through your tone, through your body language, that you really genuinely do care and that you're here for their safety. And then we'll say, like, it's really important that I know.
At least one of them, according to medical responders, was in such acute distress that a delay of hours, not days, would have resulted in death. This is the thriller within the political headline. If these children cannot reconstruct a coherent narrative of their own captivity within the next few days, how much of the crime will legally cease to exist once their bodies have been medically stabilized? How do you prosecute starvation when the stomachs are full and the bones are no longer visible through the skin? The system saw what it wanted to see. That is the refrain that binds the Turpin narrative and the Ohio narrative into a single damning file. In Turpin, the family moved constantly. They evaded school districts. They pulled out of homeschooling registrations when questions started to bubble to the surface. The Ohio family utilized the same migratory evasion tactic, floating between jurisdictions, leaving behind a paper trail of rent defaults instead of educational records. The modern surveillance state, with its cameras and its databases, proved completely permeable. The grandparents lived on the property. The parents collected the benefits. Neighbors occasionally saw a pale, skinny child in the yard and then never saw them again. The gap between what was officially filed and what actually festered inside that house is not a failure of a single social worker. It is a structural collapse of the interface between Child Protective Services, the Food Stamp Office, and the local school board. The computer systems talk to each other about eligibility, but no human being ever knocked on the door to count the bodies. When the deputies finally breached the room, they did not find children. They found, as the governor's statement later conceded, evidence of a life that was nearly extinguished. We are left with the unanswered question that haunts the docket. The probable cause affidavit for the arrest of the parents and grandparents is a public record. You can find it in the Vinton County Court of Common Pleas. Look at the narrative supplement written by the first responding deputy. It is a short, terse piece of police prose, but within its lines is a stark numerical discrepancy. The deputy saw 16 children, yet the official records of the state knew of only a fraction of them. I want you to read that filing. And then I want you to answer this in the comments. Was this house hidden because the parents were cunning, or was it hidden because the bureaucratic machinery is designed to process numbers, not human faces? How many more garden sheds are sitting on quiet American streets right now, invisible only because no one has yet cross-referenced a food stamp card with a school enrollment form? The evidence is out there, buried in the silence between government databases. The system saw what it wanted to see, until a warrant on an unrelated property cracked the door open.
You know, I was a prior social worker for child protection, and then I became a forensic interviewer. I know that they were detained, right? But they were detained by Child Protective Services, whatever that they call that in their county, and they are in foster care. You know, so many social workers, these social workers are, they usually get a bad rap. Most social workers that work in child protection get a bad rap. They're affected by these things. They have a lot of passion and care for kids. So I know from the social worker who responded to all the way to their administration, they have their best interests at heart. They're looking to put them in an environment where they're safe, where they're cared, where they're nurtured because of what they're coming from. 16 kids are hard to place together.
Yeah.
So most child protection agencies want to place kids together. That's their goal. They're not trying to rip kids apart, kidnap kids, do all that stuff that we hear all over the internet. And I understand why people feel the way they do. I'm not arguing that point, but these kids probably can't stay together. There's not one foster home that can take 16 kids.
Will they try to group allies of siblings who are more connected to each other and somehow learn that information and group them together?
Yeah. And sometimes because these older kids in this home are maybe parentified, like they are the parent.
Yep.
They had to care and nurture these kids. They will do an assessment if that is in that older child's best interest to stay with the littles. Yeah. Or not, just for their own healing and their own autonomy to heal and get what they need rather than taking care of all the kids.
So complicated because of course the little one expects that the bigger sibling is the parent, but that poor sibling is a child and needs to be a child. And oh God,
and
there's
a
no win.
18 years old now. Mm-hmm. So they technically can't even be in the same room and in the same home. They would be having to be placed somewhere else. But sometimes special circumstances, they really do look at these cases and say, what can we do for these kids immediately to keep them together? They will have multiple visits with each other very quickly after the removal so that they're still seeing each other and that they're connected. So
if you believe that the truth is not found in press conferences but in the cold, hard data of court documents and forensic protocols, then you need to like and share this video. Subscribe to Endless Cryme and turn on notifications because the next time a governor uses the word evil to sanitize a systemic breakdown, we will already have the affidavit in our hands.
Four who've been arrested: mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa. I do want to say one thing about the Turpin case because many of you will probably remember it. And this was the double tragedy. They were rescued from the Turpin household and they were placed into foster homes. And then God, who could have imagined They were some of them were terribly abused, even worse in some of the foster homes, and those became criminal cases as well. And Denise worked on those as well, doing the forensic interviews. So it's not that we forgot about it.